I wanted to thank all of you. I wanted to thank all of you for this opportunity for me to practice with you. And I've been trained in Buddhist temples. I've had monastic and lay experience. So I've lived in various Buddhist centers and temples in North America and also in Korea, where my spiritual lineage comes from. And there's before morning or evening meditation and service, and there's always this wonderful feeling in the temple, this quieting down, this letting go of cares and worries, or being willing to put them aside and center ourselves in our spiritual lives. And I was just feeling that in my little apartment in which I live here in Oakland, and just a very sacred, wonderful feeling pervading my home and my household. And that's because of all of you. So I just really wanted to thank you for that. So, so wonderful. So I'll begin the Dharma talk, and we will leave time for some Q&A, your insights, your questions near the end. The title of my talk is Grieving Our Losses in 2020. Impermanence, Interconnection, and the Way Through. And the brief description that I had written for this evening said, gathering in Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC, spiritual community, let's pause together and take some deep breaths, acknowledging and grieving our losses in 2020, and together moving toward the winter solstice, which is around December 21st. It is within and through the power of community, and within and through the power of kalyanamitta. So that's spelled KALYANAMITTA, and that means spiritual friendship, which is a topic I love to talk about, and a reality I love even more to live. So right now we're gathered in as kalyanamittas, as spiritual friends. So it is through the power of community and kalyanamitta, or spiritual friendship, that we will make our way through whatever lies ahead of us. And that is not, thank you, Julio, for posting that in the chat. And this is not idle talk. This is not something esoteric. We hear the term now mutual aid quite a bit as communities find resources and gather resources so that we can help one another at the local level when the structures of the regions, the states, the nation in which we live are allowing people to fall through the cracks without a safety net. We're creating a safety net for one another as best we can. Always imperfect. Everything's always imperfect. And when we see what is possible, so encouraging, so uplifting. So let us help one another and support one another in whatever lies ahead of us. So taking a step back, once again, my name is Mushim. That's a Korean Buddhist name. Patricia Ikeda. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am joining this online meeting from my home on unceded land of the Confederate villages of the Lisjan. It's Lisjan, more conventionally known as Oakland, California, in the United States. So for any of us who are here this evening who may have low vision or who may be blind, I have white hair. It's longer than it used to be, but not too long, piled on top of my head. I have glasses. And I'm wearing some Buddhist wooden beads around my neck and a sort of a yellow-brown tunic on top. And you can just see the tops of the straps of, I'll just hold it up. This is a Buddhist garment called the rakasu or the kasa, which signifies the robe of the Buddha. It's made of different pieces of cloth sewn together in a patchwork, traditional patchwork fashion, which signifies the patched robe of the Buddha and the original monastic Sangha, the Buddhist monks and nuns who tried to waste nothing and recycle everything. They were very ecological, and who sometimes patched together their robes, sewed their robes from pieces of cloth that were given to them, and they always patched things whenever something wore down or ripped. So this is symbolic of that very simple, environmentally friendly way of life. And today is December 3rd, 2020. This is day 265. I counted. Since the shelter in place COVID-19 pandemic order was announced here in the Bay Area in California, and that was on March 16th, 2020. So today is 265 into the recognition that the pandemic was going to change everything, and it did. And some of you who have connected to me through Facebook on social media know that as a practice, this just came to me. I thought, how am I going to get through? How am I going to get through whatever lies ahead? And I thought, I'm going to need to upgrade my loving kindness and goodwill practice, my metta practice. So it came to me that every day my intention was to post on my Facebook page a loving kindness wish for a different group of beings or an individual, and to bring to my mind and uphold metta and loving kindness for the many beings and not lumping them all together, separating them out. And this has been surprisingly impactful, and it's provided a wonderful forum online for people to chime in and to say, yes, my sister is an intensive care unit nurse. And to again amplify. We're hearing the word amplify a lot these days. I am anyway. We just went through a giant election here in the United States, and there was, let's amplify this message. So I wanted to amplify loving kindness practice. And this was a very simple way to do it. It's been effective. And I invite you to do so as well if you'd like. Doesn't need to be every day if that's a drag for you, just every once in a while. I'll say goodwill or loving kindness to squirrels. Or Wednesday here is garbage pickup day. So I can hear in the early morning the trucks coming around, and I send metta to the employees who are picking up my garbage in the brown can, that's landfill, and my compost and vegetable scraps in the green bin, and my recyclables in the gray bin. And I try to separate all of that out as a practice as well. So many of us have, and I'm sure all of us have experienced losses, probably throughout our lives, and perhaps especially so since the spring of this year, which some people are calling year one of the plague. And there have been many losses. We know, as Black, Indigenous people of color, that our communities are disproportionately affected by this pandemic here in the United States and beyond, and that there are cascading effects of various forms of crises, including climate crisis, which was ongoing before the pandemic, and that there have been economic, social, governmental effects and crises that have come together during this time. So there's a lot to grieve, I feel, and grief is a very human journey, and I'm extremely familiar with it. I turned 67 at the end of this month and beginning of the new year, and both of my parents have passed, and some younger people through accidents and illness. And some of you know that one of our core teachers at East Bay Meditation Center, the very, very beloved Shahara Godfrey, passed peacefully on December 1st, 2 days ago. So if you're on the mailing list, and you can look at our website and our social media, we are organizing at this very moment a beautiful celebration of Shahara's life, which will be on December 13th in the afternoon. That's a Sunday. So stay tuned. Everyone will be invited, and you can get the Zoom information. We're organizing that. And there will also be fundraising for the considerable medical expenses and other expenses to help her family. So all of this will be coming to us. And for those of us who knew her and loved her and appreciated her, she did have cancer over the past few years. And I have to say, just battled it. She did battle it, in my opinion, with courage, with grace, and with the strength of her spiritual practice and her love. So that's a gift. That's a gift to witness that and be with it. As sad as it is, as much as our hearts may be hurting to lose our Shahara, there's also the legacy that she left of how to be with adversity, how to be with pain, which we all need to help each other with. I also want to note for myself that today I was scheduled to teach the People of Color Sangha today. Today is the anniversary of my mother's death. She died, I think, on December 3rd in 1997 at her home, as she wished, in rural Virginia, in the house that she and my father had built for their retirement. It was on a big man-made lake and had forest around it. My parents were nature lovers. I grew up in Ohio in a semi-rural area, and we just all loved birds and trees and grass and water, and that's how we are. And so she was able to die with the help of hospice in her home. And I've been thinking about her a lot today, because without her, I wouldn't be here. And so I am grateful. We may ask ourselves, with the many losses, this very human process of grief that we all go through in our own way, in some similar ways, in some different ways. So your way of grieving is not going to have to follow some prescribed pattern or the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model thing. It comes and it goes. It's individual for each of us. And for each of us, it is a journey. For the major losses, it's a very long journey. And it's a journey that has opportunities in it for deep, deep, deep spiritual insights. In the Buddhist path, one of the major foundations of the teachings of and practice of Buddhism or the Dharma is that of what is translated into English as impermanence. Impermanence. That means that everything that is born or created will have a certain lifespan of a certain duration. It might be very long, past our own lifetimes. It might be so short, like some insects. They hatch out at the beginning of the day and then they're gone by the end of the day. So everything that is born or created has a certain lifespan, hatches out or is born, manifests into life, has a certain duration, and then goes through the transition that we call death, in which that which has come together to form this physical body begins to transform rapidly and quickly into its basic elements. Different faith traditions have different ways of holding this. I'm just inviting you, if you like, to consider what we know that the historical teacher called the Buddha taught, that all of life is subject to impermanence, to be of the nature of change. And if we look around us, at least for me, that's pretty much what I see. Buildings at a certain point fall down or are pulled down so that other buildings can go up, or maybe a park will be built there. Everything has its own lifespan, so to speak. And even in the time that I've been alive as a citizen of the United States, I've seen very large changes and transformations. So impermanence. I've been using this statement in my teaching, and I'm going to highlight it again to appreciate the work of activist Sonia Renee Taylor, author of the website and the book, The Body is Not an Apology. And you can find this statement online. It became a meme. I think it's, for me, in a few words, it states certainly what I feel about the situation in which we find ourselves. And Julio has posted thebodyisnotanapology.com. Thank you, in the chat. So please do check it out if you haven't. She is a really amazing thought leader, activist, and performer. And I think woman-identified woman of color. So at the start of the pandemic, Sonia Renee Taylor said and wrote this: "We will not go back to normal." Because, of course, many people were saying, oh my gosh, this pandemic, when will we be able to go back to normal? Send our kids back to school? Reopen our businesses? Of course, that question came up. Taylor boldly said, we will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and all of nature. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment. And in many ways, that statement applies to East Bay Meditation Center itself. We are, in the 15 years that we've had our doors open, or been online now, and before that, as different waves of boards of directors came together and formed and stormed and normed and dissolved, and then another wave of directors would come together to try to form what the mission and the vision of East Bay Meditation Center is. And it was finally decided that we would commit to being in Oakland, which is when I got involved, because I live in Oakland. My kid went through the Oakland school, public schools, K through 12, and I really wasn't interested in a center in some other part of the Bay Area, because there are many centers, Buddhist centers and meditation centers in other parts of the Bay Area and in the East Bay. And I wanted something in Oakland that felt like Oakland, and that was of the Oakland diversity of cultures and acknowledged Oakland's history. And it just is Oakland. And now that we're online, of course, that's a transformative element again, because impermanence. So East Bay Meditation Center could be described as what is called an act of prefigurative activism, or what's now being called fractal, a fractal organization. And what that means is that we try as best we can, imperfectly, we're always trying to model and embody and be the changes that we'd like to see, to be the society in which we want to live on a more miniature scale. So I see that there are 84 of us now in this people of color meditation group and meeting. And I would just invite you to consider that that's what we're doing now. We're connecting to one another, we're practicing together, and we're being together in a way that hopefully is a vision and a reality for the time we're together, of the world in which we want to live. A world of respect, of equity, of loving kindness and caring, of mutual aid, of recognition and upholding one another in our many differences, of knowing that with so many different cultures, there is an infinite amount to learn, to celebrate, to come into conflict with one another, to be frank with, and to work through that conflict, find ways to work through those conflicts in ways that, again, prefigure or are a fractal of a reproducible way of living in peace and harmony, in dynamic peace and harmony, which includes the acknowledgement of tension and the restorative approach to conflict, meaning that we are a community. Let's try to move together through this as a community. Let's see what we can do to remain whole. So let's just take a moment and feel our connection to one another. Even in a virtual space, some of us have our cameras on and we can see one another. We always usually invite everyone to unmute at the end and say goodbye and wave. You can keep your camera off. Some people feel safer that way or have various reasons. However, we love to see your faces. We love to see you. We love to hear you. And we do that at the end of every meeting of this practice group. So we can connect to each other with our eyes. We can wave our hands. We can feel the energy of our good hearts. We're now beginning to have an increasing amount of ASL, or American Sign Language, interpretation for some of our classes. And we have funding for that, and we've developed relationships to an increasing number of really wonderful ASL interpreters. And to them and all of you, I'll say thank you. I think this is a sign for it, the ASL. Thank you. We are committed to access. So I invite you now to reflect for a moment on the journey of this year, 2020, and all you've had to navigate in order to be with us here today, arriving in the fullness and the glory of your whole self. Feeling the healed person that we know we can be, and with kindness acknowledging our injuries, our wounds, our sorrows. And just taking a moment in community to feel that we're in a safe space, I hope, and I feel it, to experience with lightness, with kindness, safely, our grief over the many losses of this year. Loss can weigh us down with the heaviness of the grief process, as I know very well. It can also open us. Our broken hearts can be broken open to something much larger than our individual selves. What could be called the spiritual realm. There is an Inuit song that's been translated into English as this: I think over again my small adventures, my fears, those small ones that seemed so big, for all the vital things I had to get and to reach. And yet there is only one great thing, the only thing, to live, to see the great day that dawns and the light that fills the world. So that's from an original translation attributed to a report of the 5th Thule Expedition, Volume 9, 1921 to 1924. So it's been around for a while. Whatever you've lost this year, you know this has produced a change in your life. And losses and gains are forms of change, which can also be called impermanence. So change is impermanence, and impermanence is a form of transformation. Sometimes it's transformation that's desired. Sometimes it's transformation that is something we wished we never would have had to go through. Sometimes it's transformation that we actually don't care about one way or another. What have the transformations been for you in this year as we head toward the winter solstice, the day of shortest daylight, the longest night, as we tip over into the next cycle of gradually increasing light? the great day that dawns, and the light that fills the world. And as we support one another, witness one another, accompany one another through these changes, this is how we realize our interconnection and our interdependence. Because no one can make this human journey alone. I speak as a mother and as a Buddhist practitioner. We need each other, and we are woven together. So how will we show up for one another in 2021? In order to stitch a new garment, one that fits our entire community, all of humanity, and all of nature. Thank you so much. And if you have a question or an insight, we do have a few minutes, so please put it in the chat. Someone told me that grief is an expression of love. Definitely can be. I mean, I grieved for my mother and I loved her very much. I miss her.
There was another chat also. I just want to say this resonated so much for me. Thank you all, Sangha. Thank you, teacher.
Thank you. It just feels so good to me to be in BIPOC community. It does. We are different, and there's certain things that we share in common, which for me creates a very warm space. It's a safe space, and we need warm, safe spaces in which to do our deepest grieving. It's a process that breaks us down and makes us so vulnerable and opens us up to life and to death and what we value. Our friend says, yes, indeed, to be in this space. Thank you to all.
I've received a chat, Mushim, that basically they were expressing this was my first time joining this community, and it was great. Thank you.
Oh, please come back. And I saw in the chat too that someone lost their animal companion. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That goes well beyond the furry ones. They're feathered animal companions. One member of our People of Color Sangha has a pet iguana. You mentioned equity and loving kindness. Could you please elaborate? Sure. So I do a number of different functions, and I am an independent diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. I mainly worked for Buddhist institutions and some educational institutions over the last, 20 years or so, I'd say. And I'm really pleased to see that the word equity has been added. First, it was diversity, and then it was diversity and inclusion, and now it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, because diversity means ways in which we're similar and different. And in and of itself, it's like, okay. And so people were like, you can have diversity without inclusion and still treat people unequally. And so how do we include everyone and help everyone to feel engaged and well treated and be open to everyone's brilliance and contributions, and then we can all move forward together. And so the word equity has been added. With the Buddhist meditation on loving kindness, that original word in Pali, P-A-L-I, one of our ancient languages, is metta, M-E-T-T-A. In Sanskrit, another of our ancient languages, it's Maitri, M-A-I-T-R-I. And it comes from a sutra or discourse of the Buddha that's called the Karaniya, K-A-R-A-N-I-Y-A, Metta Sutta, You can access it for free on accesstoinsight.org. There's several different translations, and they all say, because it's translations of the same text, that this loving kindness that we're cultivating is unconditional. It is for everyone. So that is the basic equity we're talking about. It is a practice, and it is a direction of development that we don't need. In fact, please do not force yourself to feel loving kindness for people who have harmed us or anything like that. It needs to grow naturally. And it invites us to consider, again, this basic equity of what would it like to live in a world where the structures of society were such that everyone did have equitable access to what we need, not only to survive, but to thrive at the highest level possible. That to me is loving kindness. So it's not a soft, mushy feeling. Buddhist loving kindness, or metta, is so strong. And it's a goal. We can go in that direction. So again, in my Facebook daily post, every once in a while, I'd go outside my comfort zone and I'd say, metta challenge zone, metta challenge zone.
Mushim, there was a question or comment, maybe it's both. I didn't have the honor of knowing Shahara Godfrey. Could you share with us more of her legacy you spoke of?
Thank you. Shahara was one of our group of core teachers at East Bay Meditation Center and has been with the EBMC Sangha since the beginning, so 15 years, and is also the member of many, many other communities of Buddhist practice, as well as she's an accomplished artist and worked as a professional in the field of mental health for many years. So in the next few days, and I mean like maybe tomorrow or the next day, you'll all have access. So if you're on the mailing list or look on our social media, it'll be on the website. We'll get the word out. We've put up a website so that everyone who knew Shahara and those who didn't know Shahara can go there and look at video and written and photos of her life and remembrances of her and our well wishes for her on the journey. So you'll see photos. There's a beautiful photo that's up that her daughter chose. And there's another photo that Larry Yang just posted that shows Shahara as part of a wonderful group of teachers. I think it's Spirit Rock. So you're going to really see a lot of Shahara's life, which is a great gift to us, and heartfelt remembrances by those who knew her and benefited so much from her wonderful teachings over so many years. So you'll all have that opportunity.